Carl Jung had friends all over the world, and he stayed in contact with them through letters. In the years before his death, he kept writing careful, personal letters because he believed some truths only appear when no one is performing. Near the end of his life, Jung shared draft pages from what would become Man and His Symbols, a final attempt to make his life's work understandable to ordinary people. One of the people he sent those pages to was a Vedanta teacher in India, someone trained to look straight at the illusion of the self, and the reply Jung received is not what most people expect. It doesn't flatter him, it doesn't agree politely, and near the end it offers a calm disagreement that lands harder than an argument, because it's precise. There's a line in this letter that can change the way you see the shadow and the way you think about spiritual growth. Before we begin, I will ask you to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you want more Jung, more depth, and more letters like this. And leave a comment. Where are you watching from, and what would you ask Jung if you could write him a letter? Now, this is that letter.
Rishikesh, India, February 1960. Dear Carl Jung, I received your draft pages and read them here in the quiet hours by the river. I went through them once, then again a few days later. The second time, a particular line stayed in my mind longer than it should have. Not because it was wrong in spirit. I think you're aiming at something true, but because I've seen that same idea misunderstood in a way that traps sincere people. I'll come back to that line after a few points that I genuinely admire because the concern only makes sense. Once those points are on the table, what you're doing in these pages is rare. You're trying to speak clearly to ordinary people without flattening the work. And you're doing it with the tone of someone who has watched the mind for a lifetime. People suffer for decades without understanding what's happening inside them. They blame their circumstances. They blame other people. They rarely suspect. They're living inside patterns they can't see. Your description of the shadow feels close to what we call avidya in Vedanta, not seeing. You describe the shadow as what gets pushed away, denied, left unexamined, and then lived out indirectly. Vedanta describes the habit of identifying with what changes, moods, roles, stories, and then defending that mistaken identity as me. Different language, same movement. Something is avoided, and suffering grows around it. I also appreciated your handling of symbols. You treat them as living expressions of what the conscious mind can't hold all at once. In Vedanta, we use pointers for the same reason, not to decorate thought, but to loosen certainty, so the mind becomes honest again. Still, this is another place where people can go wrong. They can start collecting meanings, the way they collect achievements. And that, too, connects to the concern I mentioned. So, yes, there is strong convergence between your pages and Vedanta. And there is one point where I feel a serious difference begins. I'll approach it carefully, because I don't think it's a small detail. I think it changes what a reader believes the goal is. Let me start with something simple. When people come to an ashram like this, many of them are looking for relief. They want peace, clarity, a quiet mind. What they usually meet first is themselves. Silence has a way of bringing back what has been postponed. Old grief, old anger, old shame, the urge to impress, the fear of being ordinary. Your description of the shadow matches this very closely. The mind keeps a hidden room, and then one day the door opens. In Vedanta, we describe the same experience using the language of samskaras, impressions, patterns left in the mind by years of reaction. A man thinks he is choosing freely, but much of his life is simply old momentum. Your shadow sometimes reads to me as this momentum, when it is unrecognized, the unseen hand that keeps steering, even when the conscious mind believes it is in charge. There's a small difference worth naming. In your work, the shadow often appears as what was rejected. Emotions, impulses, traits, a person could not accept. In Vedanta, the root sits even deeper. We say the most powerful rejection is the rejection of reality as it is. A man rejects uncertainty. He rejects change. He rejects mortality. Then he builds an identity to protect him from these facts. That identity becomes his shelter and his prison. This is where your manuscript touches something we call Maya. People hear Maya and think it means the world is fake. That's not how I mean it. Maya is the way appearances feel final, the way a passing thought feels like me, the way a temporary mood feels like truth. In your language, the persona is one of the clearest expressions of this. A useful mask becomes a permanent face. I think many readers will recognize themselves here. They'll say, "Yes, I do that." But what your manuscript quietly implies, and what I want to emphasize, is that the cost is not only inner. A person who lives behind a mask becomes fragile. Fragility produces defensiveness. Defensiveness produces harshness. People often call that harshness strength. It is usually fear. This is why I appreciate that you do not treat the shadow as an enemy. You treat it as a part of life that demands attention. In Vedanta, we say something similar. We don't win by destroying parts of the mind. We win by seeing clearly enough that the mind stops lying. Your pages about symbols are useful for the same reason. A symbol can carry what the mind cannot admit directly. It can sneak truth, past pride. But I want to underline the danger I hinted at earlier. People can turn symbols into trophies. They can interpret their dreams like fortune tellers, collecting meanings the way they collect titles. When that happens, the symbol stops pointing. It becomes decoration. In Vedanta, we use stories and metaphors, but we also warn students not to hoard them. A teaching is a tool. Once it has done its work, it should be put down. I think your manuscript can be read in that spirit, and it will help many people. If it is read that way, your treatment of dreams also reminded me of something important. Dreams show a man what he cannot easily admit while awake. In meditation, something similar happens, but the feeling is different. In a dream, the ordinary control is softened. In meditation, control is still present, but it becomes strained. People see the mind trying to manage itself, and they realize how exhausting that is. Many beginners think meditation should feel pleasant. When it doesn't, they believe they are failing. But what often happens is more honest. The mind brings forward unfinished material. Old arguments replay. Old wounds show their shape. You might call this shadow content rising. We might call it samskaras surfacing. In either language, the instruction is the same. Don't run. This is where I feel close to you. Your work is in a quiet way, a training in courage. You are telling the reader that what he avoids will not disappear, and that the cost of avoidance will be paid in indirect ways through relationships, moods, and repeated choices. Now, I want to bring in the central Vedanta point that sits behind everything else. You write about the self as a kind of wholeness, a center that appears when the fragments are faced and integrated. Vedanta asks a different question first. Who is aware of the fragments? Before any story appears, something knows the story. Before any fear appears, something knows fear. We call that knowing presence, the witness, sakshi. I want to be careful here, because I've seen this misunderstood too. People hear about the witness, and they turn it into another identity. They start performing calm. They start collecting a spiritual image. That isn't what I mean. The witness is simply what is already present. Awareness itself, before the mind builds a personality around it. When a person notices the witness clearly, something changes. Thoughts still arise. Emotions still arise. But the mind loses the habit of declaring each movement as me. That loosening reduces suffering in a way that is difficult to explain. It is not dramatic. It is quieter than that. It feels like releasing a clenched fist you didn't know you were holding. And there is a simple test I've learned to trust. After insight, does a person become less defended or simply more explained? Awareness is quiet. It doesn't need to advertise itself. Sometimes witnessing becomes a new mask, and the mask looks peaceful, so no one questions it. This is why I'm paying such attention to your language of wholeness and integration. I agree that a person must face what he denies. I agree that denial is dangerous, but I also watch what happens when a mind turns inner work into another ladder. Some people read about integration and treat it like a final achievement. They start speaking as if they have arrived. They take pride in their complexity. From the outside, it looks like wisdom. Inside, it can be another cage. This is where I see the serious difference beginning. Individuation, as I understand it, helps a person become more honest and complete as a person. It integrates what was split. It reduces blindness. Vedanta aims at loosening the attachment to being a separate person in the first place. That doesn't make one path superior. It means the final questions are different. Many people need what you offer. Their inner world is fragmented and driven by forces they cannot name. They are ruled by the shadow because they have never faced it. For them, integration is medicine. They need it to become stable enough to inquire at all. But I've met a different kind of seeker, and I suspect you have too. He is not chaotic. He is not confused. He is refined. He is disciplined. He is even integrated. Yet he still suffers because he cannot stop defending an identity. That is where Vedanta becomes direct. It asks him to look at the one who needs to defend. This difference matters even beyond the individual. You hint, and I agree, that what is unconscious is not only personal. A group can share a shadow. A culture can share denial. When that happens, cruelty often becomes normal, while calling itself virtue. Vedanta describes the root of that cruelty as the belief in separation. When a man believes he is separate, he must compare. When he compares, he must judge. When he judges, he must justify harm. This chain is quiet and constant. People rarely see it while they are living inside it. Your work helps people see their hidden motives. Vedanta helps people see the hidden assumption beneath those motives. I am a separate unit that must be defended. When that assumption softens, many harsh behaviors soften with it. Now, let me return to the line that stayed with me. It's not the content of the sentence. It's how a certain kind of reader can use it. When you speak of becoming whole, many will hear, become better. And a mind that has spent a lifetime trying to become better will happily take that as permission to keep striving forever. That's the trap I've watched so many sincere people fall into. They leave the ordinary ladder of success and climb a spiritual ladder instead. They stop chasing money and start chasing depth. It looks noble. It can even look humble, but it still tastes like hunger. I've seen seekers leave ordinary ambition behind and feel relieved. Then, slowly, the same tension returns in a new costume. They start measuring themselves by insight, by purity, by how awake they appear. That's why I called it hunger. Hunger is hunger, even when it speaks in spiritual language. Vedanta is strict about this, because it has seen the mind do it for centuries. The ego is capable of upgrading itself endlessly. If it can't feel special through power, it will feel special through insight. So the teaching keeps turning the student back to the simplest question: who is the one claiming progress? I want to say this carefully. As a friend, I do not think your work causes this trap. I think the mind causes it. But your manuscript will reach many people, and some will try to use it that way. My hope is that they will also hear your deeper message. The goal is not to impress oneself with sophistication. The goal is to become honest, and then to become free from the need to protect an image. That's where I feel our paths meet again. When a person sees clearly, harshness softens, judgment relaxes, compassion appears, and it doesn't feel like a moral command. It feels like what naturally happens when fear reduces near the end of life. This matters even more. The body weakens, roles fall away, the future shrinks. Many people react to this by tightening their grip on identity. They try to secure a story about who they are, what they achieved, what they became. But there is another possibility: becoming simpler. The mind can stop polishing itself and start telling the truth. Your manuscript, in its best reading, invites that simplicity. It invites the reader to stop running from what is real. If I had to sum up where I feel we truly meet, it's here. You help people face what they avoid. Vedanta helps people stop mistaking every inner movement for a self that must be defended. That brings me back to the line that stayed with me. My concern was never the depth of what you meant. It was the way certain minds will try to turn wholeness into a new hunger. If your reader can hear your deeper message, the trap is avoided. The work becomes honest, quiet, and real. It becomes less about becoming impressive and more about becoming free. I'm grateful you chose, especially at this stage, to write in a way ordinary people can receive. That is generosity. If you have the time and strength to reply, even briefly, I would welcome it. I would be glad to hear how you hold the tension between integration and the risk of turning integration into another identity. For now, I send this as a friend. Here the days are simple: the bell, the river, the same morning light returning. It reminds a man that what matters is rarely loud. With sincere regards, your friend, Swami Vidyananda, a monk in practice.
The letter ends there. What makes it unsettling is how calmly it holds two truths at once. Jung is right. What we avoid doesn't disappear, it returns. It shapes our life from the shadows. And the Swami is right too. Even healing can become a new identity, a more refined ego, a prettier cage. So the real question isn't only what you're avoiding, it's what you're trying to become while you face it, and whether that someone is just another mask. If this resonated, like the video, subscribe and turn on notifications. We're continuing this series with more letters, more Jung, and more depth without the fluff. And now I want to ask you something specific. If you could write back to the Swami, what would you say, what would you agree with, and what would you challenge? Leave your reply in the comments. I read them.